Master the business of speaking with your hosts, Taylor and Austin. You're listening to Technically Speaking.
Welcome to another episode of Technically Speaking. We're your hosts, Taylor and Austin, and in today's episode, we're talking about what being charged at by a lion has to do with business. Okay, now we're going to go deeper than that, more specifically about a no-holds-barred conversation of running a really successful speaking business. But nonetheless, the person with the lion story and the person booking 100 to 150 events every single year is Dan Ram. Now, Dan Ram is a 5-time TEDx speaker, an international MC, and host, and has hosted great minds like Barack Obama, Sir Richard Branson, Reid Hoffman, Formula F1 drivers, and the list goes on and on and on. Now, like I said earlier, Dan books 100 to 150 events per year. Now, did that happen overnight? How do you maintain that? How do you keep the business going? What systems do you need in place? How do you keep yourself motivated? And how do you keep yourself disciplined? And we're talking about all of this in today's episode. And Dan's number one goal is to inspire and motivate people with his simple start now, start simple approach. And we're going to unpack that philosophy and how he's been able to create a successful business that's booking 100 to 150 events per year. So what's not to love about that? Let's go ahead and dive in. As always, we hope you enjoy this one, and we'll see you in there.
Yay. All right, folks,
we did it.
We're live. Welcome. And it's so good to have you here. Thank you for joining us today. Holy cow.
Whew.
Whew.
You ready for this?
I'm so ready for this.
Yeah.
He's like bracing for impact.
Like
over
I'm
there,
holding on to everything.
Oh, what's happening?
We got two really good looking, slightly overwhelmed by this situation. People here with fancy beards and hats and everything. And I feel a little bit naked. My beard game is not that strong. I don't have any good hat situation. And but I also know, and maybe that is just a good role to play, because I want you to rip me apart and let's create as much value as possible. I don't mean like as in be rude to me. I mean, you can if you want to be, but like let's layers, right? Let's not pretend like this is an easy game or it's the facade or the Forbes magazine. Let's just do everything back. Let's get real. Let's get dirty. Let's get raw. I don't even know if that's appropriate, but let's do all the above for the.
Hey, we got the parental advisory logo, so don't worry. Everything's
real dirty
here.
And raw. That's what we do here at Speaker Flow. I'm terrified by what that means. And listeners, I'm sorry for the visual that you may have just been given, but you know.
Well, whatever.
Yeah. We're excited for this. There's many reasons we're excited for this. First of all, we're just impressed by you. So on that note, thank you for sharing your time with us today. That's awesome. As our listeners know, going into a show, we kind of like to be prepared-ish, at least, to have a jumping off point. So like we were looking at your website, which branding on point, by the way. Checked out your social media. Right. Again, brand consistency is really strong. Like you really live the values that you teach. So thanks for that too. Something that caught our attention though, that I can't fathom, and I'm questioning if I like read English properly was that, and I have to make sure that I got this phrasing right, that this is on your Instagram page. You are a lion charge survivor. Yeah. What?
Yeah,
does that mean?
So if you know about the Bible, there's a character called Daniel, and Daniel gets thrown into a lion's pit. And I just figured I got to earn my name. And so, okay, I didn't volunteer to be charged by a lion, to be fair, but it happened to me, and I'm here to tell the story. So yeah, no, when I was 16 years old, I was on a school field trip. Clearly the chaperones were not doing a very good job because we were following a wildlife guide through the jungles. It's called the bush in Southern Africa. So through the bush of Zimbabwe. And I was in the back of the line when out of nowhere, you hear this low, dense, loud growl. And even though none of us have been trained on what to do with a lion attack, you know when you're in the bottom of the food pyramid. As humans, we generally walk around thinking that we're at the top. But you instinctively know, run, get out of here, you're about to get eaten, which is what everybody did except me. And I would like to say it was courage or boldness or power, but it's just my body malfunctioned. And my brain was going run, 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 run. And my body's going, have you seen yourself? Like, you cannot outrun this creature that's coming at you. And now it's like, all right, climb a tree, swim, something. But whatever you try to do, you cannot outpace a lion. And so I just stood my ground, which actually was the right thing to do. And in a weird way, has become part of the mantra of how you deal with life is when things get thrown at you, when you face your lion. I mean, for me, it was a physical wild lion. But when you face your lion, you stand your ground, and then you do the unthinkable. So, gentlemen, how do you handle a lion attack? What do you do? So with bears, you pretend to be dead. And with, I don't know what other wild animals you've been trained to deal with, but what do you do with a lion? Do you know? Do you know how to survive a lion attack?
I mean,
you mean like before or after I change my pants? Like, because that's the starting point for me, I'm sure. But I don't know. I mean, make yourself big, I feel like it might be something, but like, it's a lion. Like, I don't think the lion's that afraid of you. It seems like the lion's just going to bite your head off. So, yeah. So, I don't know. Try to give it a pet.
So with hyenas, that works really well to make yourself look big, because it is about dominance. There's a little bit of like, who's the bigger one here? I mean, most animals do that. That's why elephants, spread their ears out. I mean, usually it's against their bodies, but they do that when they are trying to scare you away, to just be big. I mean, why do they have to act big? They're already the biggest animals on Earth, but whatever. They do it anyway. No, you don't make yourself look big with a lion, because that is a threat to the lion, and basically goes, oh, you think you're all that, and then they come for you. So you don't do that. You'd be dead, Austin. So other guesses?
That's not surprising.
I mean, my guess would just be to run at it, but that doesn't seem to be the right thing either. So
running at it
again, because of the threatening.
Running at it actually could work if it's an inexperienced or younger lion, because it suddenly goes, wait a second,
right.
Wait, am I supposed to run away now? Because they're so used to being like, but what you do is you actually take one step at a time towards the lion, but just one calculated step. You don't know the 10 steps ahead or 20 steps ahead. You don't run, you don't go for a stroll, just one step. And that's been a big part of me dealing with life and even pandemic, is like, what's my one step that I can take? And part of my whole mantra of start now, start simple is when you're facing that lion, you got to start now, start simple, because you can't run away. You can't turn around. You certainly should not turn around. Oh my gosh, that's the worst thing with lion. But you take one step and you do it at that moment, and you keep it simple. You don't think about what to do with your hands or your breathing or your face. Just one step, and then another, and then another. But anyway, I survived the lion attack. Here I am.
Oh my gosh.
Holy crap.
I'm not going to lie. Like, we read that on the site, and the initial impression was like, that's not real. Like, that's a metaphor for something. But and it is. That's awesome. I feel touched by what you just explained. But also, oh my God, like, that has got to have been one of the craziest experiences ever.
It has been. But I'm also a slow learner, because I've had 4 near-death experiences, and I highly recommend that everybody listening and watching get a near-death experience. Now, you don't, again, have to...
That's something you just sign up for?
You don't sign up, you don't volunteer, but step out of the comfort zone. Get out there, because it's not until you realize that you are going to lose it all that you realize what you're living for, right? So because it's only at that moment, and I say not what you could lose, but what you will. Like, one day you will say goodbye to all of this, everything. And it's at that moment that you suddenly realize, what is my next breath for? Like, what am I fighting for at this moment? So in my other near-death experiences, some that also involve other animals and some that involve things like car crashes and stuff, it was one of the things that you think about. You think, what am I fighting for now? Because I could give up. And in some ways, it seems easier. When you're in a hospital, you're like, I just don't want to fight. I just want to go. But then you think, what if I were to have another breath? And more importantly, if I'm going to fight for my next breath, what am I fighting for? So I think it changes how you live life. One of the things I get complimented most on stage is about my energy. Energy is not a mystery. Energy is actually very simple to bring on stage. And for me, a big part of it is gratitude, because I know what it's like to almost be dead. And every day, every moment, even talking to the two of you, it's just like, this is awesome. I'm here in Germany. You guys are out in the world where you are. And here we're connecting with technology, having a conversation. And I may not have had this opportunity, and I'm having it now. And so I'm bringing it to this conversation. So, anyway, there's a lot of beautiful life lessons to learn from near-death experiences, stepping out of the comfort zone, going on these adventures. So, highly recommended. Have you guys had near-death experiences?
Can't say I have. Not like that.
No, not like that. When I was really like it's too early for me to remember, so I don't feel like I can even qualify. I got like this really bad kidney infection and like was in the hospital. Like, they were pretty concerned about me. So maybe that like affected my psyche deep down. I was like 3, so too young for me to really remember, but maybe enough for me to have some sort of like muscle memory or whatever you call it, So, but no, nothing quite like that. That's wild.
Yeah.
So, but I agree. I mean, it's an important thing to remember, even if you don't have the near-death experience, you can always take a step back and be grateful for what you have and where you're at and focus on the progress that has been made and remind yourself the things in life that really matter. I imagine an extreme situation like that will pretty quickly snap you into that mindset. But, I think people can probably get there without losing a limb or something, right?
Hopefully. Yeah. let's hope.
You'll be surprised how often we live like we're going to live forever. But it's the one thing you're guaranteed is you're going to die. That's so morbid, but it's a guarantee. It's going to happen. So why do we not live our lives differently? Why do we not say what we truly wish to say to those that we love? Why do we not go chase the dreams that we keep having as dreams, but why don't we make it a reality? Why don't we take those risks, go on those adventures, go on those trips, explore things? Why don't we do that? Because time's running out. You've got an expiry date. So yeah,
that's true.
And I think, you don't have to, I hate the word motivational speaker. I'm not a motivational speaker, but I'll say I'm living an inspired and intentional life. And as a result, it comes across as motivating. I don't desire to motivate or to just clap for you and go like, oh, that's amazing, you got this. But I want you to live an inspired and intentional life. I want you to live your best life, because one thing I do know is you only get this one life. I'm 100% sure about that. I don't believe in you being reincarnated and coming back. And I respect any listeners that have that ideology, but I believe we got this one shot. We got these 60 years, 80 years, 100 years, 120, who knows, maybe less. What you going to do with it?
Yeah, that's right. I remember seeing this poster. It's called 4,000 Weeks. It's like, but it's just like dots on a poster, and it's just 4,000 dots, and you've only got about 4,000 of them. And so I saw that and I was like, holy cow, that puts life into perspective, like just staring at your future, basically. Yeah. So it's a good reminder. It sounds like this has been a recurring theme throughout your life, though. You are a highly decorated speaker. 5-time TEDx, if I recall, and 150 events a year. Like, did that just like happen all of a sudden? Did you have like a big break? Was that like a slow burn and your tenacity just got you there? Like, what? Fill us in.
Everybody loves a formula. I cannot give you a formula, because anyone in my position gets asked this question, and then we just kind of pretend like we know. We go A plus B equals C, and it's not that way. Sure. Everybody's journey is different. But let me tell you a few things that have helped me. First is I work really hard, and I strategize, I optimize, I reflect, I do the hard work, not just on stage, not just when the opportunity happens, but even afterwards. I have records of every invitation I've ever received, of every event. I've written notes after every event of what went well, what I could improve on. I have pictures, videos of every place I've been to. That seems obvious to do. You'll be shocked how many speakers don't do that, because it takes effort. It takes thinking about it and doing it. It takes discipline. And I have that, right? And I think hard work is super, super important. But hard work alone won't get you there. And I want to make that clear, because I think we live in a world where we keep saying, if you just work hard enough, you'll get it. And I think a lot of people are disappointed because they are working hard. I know people who are working harder than me and they're not getting it. So there are a few other things that I think are important to throw in, because they're just as valid as hard work. First, I'm surrounded by great people, and I have to give credit to good community. Be intentional about the people around you. I have people that keep pushing me, believing in me, and creating opportunities for me. And the reason I have that, it's a very simple trick, because I know there are people right now saying, well, that's nice of you, Dan, because I'm surrounded by haters. It's really simple. You get back what you give out. It's that straightforward. The more opportunities I create for other people, the more opportunities they create for me. The more I serve and give them, the more they give it back. And I don't do any of that expecting anything in return. I want to make it clear. This isn't some economics class here. This is just a state of heart. People feel that. And so the more I love on people, create opportunities for people, I'm generous with people, the more it keeps coming back to me. At 11 o'clock at night, at midnight, at 4 o'clock in the morning when I'm at the airport, when people say, hey, Dan, can I run a pitch by you? I charge for coaching. But when a friend says, hey, can I just pick your brain at it? I'm like, absolutely, let's go. And they don't ask me, Dan, are you tired? Do you have time? They say, can you help me out? My answer is always yes. And invariably down the line, they're the same people that say, hey, I'm hosting this event, or I know this client. Can you help us? Can you come and add some value to this? So it's really simple. Give, serve, love people around you, and you will get that network that equally believe and love you. So I have to give credit to people around me, because I'm not the one opening the doors. In fact, I have never applied for a speaking gig, ever. So 150 gigs a year,
Wow.
and I've applied to 0 of them. 100% of them are people coming to me. 100%. So no one's ever received a cold email from me saying, hey, can I come and speak at your event? Can I MC at your event? Never. It's never happened. So my network is super important. Second, I think good luck and timing is important too, because I built a few tech companies. I happened to have sold them at a good time when tech conferences were taking off. And that was my pathway in, because people wanted to hear the story of what worked and what didn't work. And that just had to do with timing, because what if my companies did not work out? Or what if they worked out like 5 years later? I would have missed the opportunities right now. And also, I remember clearly the moment I got my first speaking gig, because I was volunteering, as I had until that point, at an event. And it just happened that this German woman paused at my stage, and it wasn't the main stage. I was hosting a startup stage on the side, and she paused. It just happened that the speaker ended early. It just happened that I had a few minutes to fill, and that's the moment that you know the difference between a good MC and a bad MC, a good moderator and a bad moderator. Is what do you do in those few minutes? And I turned it to the audience. We did something fun together, and she promptly walked up afterwards, and she didn't have to. She could have said, I'll go catch up with the guy later. I'll drop an email. No, just chance. She walked up to me. She gave me a business card, and she said, I'll call you this evening. We need to talk. And she did call that evening. And that's just good fortune, luck, coincidence, what do you want to call it? But you also make your luck, right? Because at that point, I'd been volunteering at events for years. So it wasn't just like I got lucky the first time. So, but I have to give credit to also luck. You got to just keep putting yourself out there, and at some point it clicks, and you cannot predict it, and you cannot time it. My third speaking gig involved Richard Branson. That substantially boosted how people saw me as a speaker, which is why eventually I got like President Barack Obama and some other Hollywood actors and stuff like that. But I could not have timed the Richard Branson thing. It's not like, it was all perfectly strategized and things like that. So you got to give also room for luck in your life. So I'd say hard work, good people around you, and leave room for timing, the state of the world, opportunities as they arise. That combination is kind of what landed me at what I'm doing now.
Oh. Whoa.
Beautifully said.
What? Yeah, man, that was such a cool breakdown. Thank you so much for all of that, first of all. There's something that reminded me of that I want to point out, the luck part, because luck, people hear that, and I think some people tune out because maybe they think they're not a lucky person, or that there's, betting on luck is betting on hope. And I think all of those things are true, but there's something that has rung in the back of my head for almost a decade now since I've heard it. And it's this phrase that luck is when preparation meets opportunity. Like what happened for you, Dan, was you put yourself in the right place and you were prepared to take advantage of the opportunity when it came along, and you did. And from that, like, more opportunity blossomed. And so you continue to get more lucky. But luck isn't just as simple as chance. I think there's an element of being in the right headspace and be willing to do the thing that maybe other people aren't willing to do when the opportunity arises, and then see what happens from that. There's something to be said about being bold, and not just trusting that good things will happen to you, because
You're right.
that's not luck. That's hope.
Luck is also not something that's passive. I believe that luck is something that's
Yep.
active. And to put things into context, because I did start with hard work, I have been volunteering at speaking. So I was very lucky to grow up in the church. And the one good thing, I mean, there's a lot of bad things about church, but one good thing about church is it gives you opportunities to read a scripture or to sing a song or something of that sort. It's a space that is for that. And so from a young age, from like 6 or 7, whenever we had like a talent show or like a community event in the church, my parents would force me up on stage. And I say force because I am not an extrovert. I am not a give me your attention, I need your attention kind of guy. I'm most certainly the guy who's in the back having a very uncool, unpopular conversation with the other loser that is in the room. That is my actual personality. And my parents would force me up in front. And so I had to learn how to play piano. I had to learn how to tell a little story before playing the piano. I had to learn how to organize games at youth camps and stuff like that. And so I did that dutifully. And because I was bad at it, I worked extra hard at it because I was worried about my stutter. And I was like, okay, I have to memorize this because if I don't memorize it, I'm going to stutter. I hated the fact that I used to say, or. And so I started working at that and going, okay, all I got to do is think 5 or 6 seconds faster than the words are coming out of my mouth. The reason I don't say and right now is because this is a partially rehearsed line. I've thought about this line before it's coming out of my mouth. So all these little things I just started picking at and working at. And I had all these opportunities, which by the way, everybody has. You've all done a class presentation. You've all been in some kind of setting, whether it's a family wedding or a get together of some sort where you've had to maybe say a prayer or give a toast or you just want to say something funny about a friend. I just worked harder at it because it did not come naturally to me. And it was all those years in the background, volunteering, trying, failing, learning from the failure, trying again, not having people's attention and going, how do I get people's attention? Not being funny and then thinking, how can I be funny? Not being inspiring and thinking, how do I be inspired? And then just building and building and building and building and building. And then at the age of 30 is when it suddenly clicked. After I'd done a lot of other stuff, working a lot of other jobs. And then at that point is when it hit. Now, there are a bunch of 22-year-olds that are probably listening and going, do I have to wait till 30? No, because I've met 12-year-olds that already know their calling and are living at it. And you might be 40 years old and listening and going, oh, I missed the boat. And the answer to that also is no. Timing is not something that is standardized for everybody, but when it clicks, and it's magical. There was something that happened after all those years of overcoming my insecurities, my failures as a speaker. There was something that happened after all those years of volunteering at different gigs and slowly make my way there. There was something that happened when I showed up on stage after all of that it just suddenly felt right. And I will tell you something, my greatest spiritual experience, and I'm using that word very intentionally, the moment that I'm the most awakened, the best version of myself is when I am on stage. But that's something that only started happening at the age of 30. And it took a whole lot of work before that. So luck in finding your calling and finding your purpose does come disguised as a lot of hard work, as a lot of overcoming your struggles, as a lot of fighting your demons. Luck is not just, oh, I'm good at this, I better get it, or I deserve it, or why do people not see this in me when I can see it myself? Luck involves all the other stuff too that I just gave examples of.
Oh man, beautifully said. Holy cow. Well, what I love about that story is it's a very realistic, right? Because I mean, let's just brief history of the story here. You spent years volunteering and speaking and learning from it and improving from it. And I would bet, again, making some assumptions here, probably wasn't the easiest time pre-30, speaking, getting on stage, finding your rhythm, all of those things. I'm sure there were moments where this was awesome, but also moments of like, dang, I have some work to do. Then all of a sudden it seems to click, and that came with lots of hard work and discipline, to your point earlier. And it's not I think often, especially with the rise of social media and magic wands and silver bullets and so on, it's really easy to seem as if things you just have it figured out, and it's a hard journey sometimes. And you get to the top of the mountain and you see the view, but it takes some climbing before you get there.
Absolutely.
And what I want to tie back to actually is your to the point of your lion story actually, and the discipline you mentioned is the start now, start simple concept. I mean, it just sounds like you just took a one step after another throughout that journey, and it still seems to be like a mantra you live by day in and day out. Did that evolve from all of this hard work, and you just had lived that start now, start simple, or how did it come into fruition?
In the early days, before those four words came together, it was just a matter of reflecting on how some of my
Hmm.
greatest moments at that point, whether it was, I don't know, winning the badminton tournaments. Remember I said I was the loser? I'm qualifying that now. Badminton, that was my greatest moment.
A fun game.
Whether it was winning the regional badminton tournament, whether it was, I mean, I did get into Yale when I was coming out of high school in Morocco. So whether it was getting into college, whether it was receiving a certain recognition, I reflect back on like, how did that happen? And everybody loves that moment, but where does it start?
Yeah.
And I realized actually it was something what seemed insignificant. It was something that seemed really sometimes even irrelevant to the final point. But it was that one step in front of the other, in front of the other that led there. I'm going to give you a super tiny example of that. But I mean, everybody likes to tell their success stories. I'm going to tell you about one of the lowest moments of my life. Uh, I had graduated from Yale. I graduated from Trinity College. I had an economics degree. I had an MBA. And everyone had told me all the time, Dan, the world's your oyster. You can do anything you want. And so, with that confidence, with the support of people around me, with that self belief, I started applying for jobs. I applied for 10 jobs, fully expected to get at least 8 interviews. And I got 10 rejections. I then applied for 10 more jobs. I thought, okay, whatever, it's not a big deal. And I got 10 more rejections. It was 2011. I was living in a country called Ireland, still called Ireland, by the way. And it was in the middle of a recession that had happened. And I didn't know then what I know now, which is that in a recession, there's high unemployment, and especially foreigners are the last ones to get picked because there's visas and expenses. It's just difficult for companies. But no one told me that. They all said, you can do anything you want. I applied for 10 more jobs, applied for 10 more jobs. I applied for about 50 jobs before I realized I got to change my strategy. So I applied for jobs that were a degree lower than what I thought I deserved. Didn't get here anything. I then applied for jobs that were in industries I never dreamt of being in. And then I applied for jobs I didn't even want, but I was so desperate. This is not for 1 or 2 weeks, gentlemen. This was for 18 months I was unemployed. I was down to under $100 in my bank account, living in this country and going, what am I doing here? What is my purpose? What is my life? I'm so confused. What is going on? And this is after and still having a very good resume. And I was so confused and I was hating this word no that I just at that moment decided I'm just going to say yes to whatever the next opportunity is. So sitting at home, and the next phone call was from a friend of mine. And she said, Dan, you know how you're doing nothing with your life? And I'm like, thanks, screw you. And she said, how about this? Why don't you come in and pretend to be an investor to my students? I need someone to volunteer to be an investor because they've been working on this business idea. My ego said no. I'm above a volunteer position. My bank account said no because I was thinking I can't afford to be spending time volunteering. I need to go get a job. And also my lack of qualification because investors have money and unemployed people don't have money. So the imposter syndrome also said no. But I had told myself I'm going to say yes. And so I told her yes. And then I Googled Shark Tank, Dragon's Den, and I did my research. And I was the best fake investor those kids had ever seen. And that evening, an angry dad called me and he said, Dan, I've never heard of you. But because of you, my little girl now believes she can be an entrepreneur. So you must be some kind of motivational speaker. Can you come and motivate my staff? I have a PR company and we're in the middle of a recession. Can you come and motivate them? And Again, my imposter syndrome said, no, because hold on a second, they have jobs. They should be already motivated. Why do you need an unemployed person to come in and motivate employed people? That doesn't even make sense. The irony of it. But I killed all the no's in my head and I told him yes. And then I Googled and I researched and I practiced the best motivational speech I could give. Nothing happened for a few weeks after that. But then the writing section wrote to me and said, Dan, we have an opportunity to write an article. We loved your positivity. The article is 5 tech trends for the future of Ireland. Do you think you can write that? I was not a tech guru. I didn't know trends. I was thinking about leaving Ireland at that point. I was unemployed for 18 months, but I still said yes. I researched it. I gave my best. I wrote it. And nothing prepared me for what came after. Because then a real shark from the Shark Tank of Ireland contacted me and said, Dan, I read your article. I love your ideas. I've been commissioned by the Minister of Jobs, Enterprise, and Innovation to put together a 7-person advisory panel to write the national policy on entrepreneurship. And I would like you to be one of those 7 people. And that is how I got appointed to writing the national policy of entrepreneurship that has affected billions in GDP, thousands of jobs, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of jobs in there, and also what catapulted my career after that. But it all started by volunteering for a bunch of 12-year-old girls when I was unemployed. So I live out this start now, start simple policy because I didn't have the resources to be a fake investor. I didn't have the qualifications. I didn't have the fancy suit and I didn't have the millions in the bank account, but I started with what I had. I kept it simple. And I didn't wait till I achieved all those things. I just started that moment. I said, yes, I'll come in and I'll do it. Even as a motivational speaker, I was not a motivational speaker. And when I was asked to write the article, I didn't say, let me go get a qualification, let me go study, let me go figure this. I said, okay, start now, start simple. During the pandemic, same thing. A lot of people lost their jobs and I feel really sorry. It was a really hard time for people. You know, a lot of people felt the pinch during the pandemic. But for me, my business tripled during the pandemic because again, it was just start now, start simple. I mean, most speakers struggle during the pandemic. I just learned to start now, start simple. Yes, I had to reinvent myself, but we did it, and now we achieved even more. So I live this mantra, and whenever you follow me on social media and stuff, it is something that you see I'm always encouraging my community to do. Whatever your dream, whatever your mission, whatever you're trying to overcome, whatever you're trying to achieve, it's always just one step in front of the other. Don't waste time preparing for a marathon or a sprint. Don't waste time building your body and getting in the right shape to figure it out. Just take the first step and then figure out the next step. Before you know it, you're in my position telling a story as ridiculous as the one I just told you.
Oh man, it's such an amazing story. I feel so motivated right now. Holy crap. There's different reasons for why I think this idea is so awesome. One of them, obviously, is that you never know what's in front of you. Like if you just take a step, sometimes a thing happens that you never could have anticipated that takes you somewhere you never would have gone otherwise. I mean, honestly, I think Taylor and I's experience growing Speaker Flow has ancillary things to that. The other thing, though, this reminds me of the principle of resistance that people face, specifically creative visionary people. But resistance is a real thing. There's these barriers we put up in front of ourselves, and then nothing gets done because we're so focused on maybe how much work it's going to be to get to the end result or whatever that we just don't even start. But I find what happens is like, by taking that first step, you get a little bit of momentum behind you and then things get a lot easier, you know? Like it's the whole thing with like, you got your basket full of laundry to put away, fold one pair of your underwear and put them up. And like, by the time you've done that, you're probably going to do one more. Like, come on, it's not that much more work to do one more piece of laundry. And then by the time you know it, like all your laundry's done. And it's just because you took that first initial thing, even if it was just the smallest thing you were willing to commit to. So not only does it set you up for more potential opportunities and possibilities and luck and all the things we've discussed so far, but it also gives you a little bit of momentum. So the next step is even easier to take. You've already done one. You can do one more and one more and one more. And that momentum is really valuable, I find, in a lot of areas of life, specifically business too.
And if I may add, momentum is necessary for longevity because a lot of people want to skip steps and there are some essential things you got to learn. So the first time you fold your laundry, you may get it wrong. You might have to do it 2 or 3 times, but then you'll learn how to be more efficient about it. I don't know why we're having this laundry analogy, but we'll just go with it.
Hey, it's a good one.
So there are some very, very important things to learn along the way that you cannot just leapfrog and then try to learn in retrospect. You need to be in that position, in that step, and to then build up the momentum, to build momentum. So I would also say find joy in that first step. Don't keep your eyes so far ahead of like, oh, I can't wait to get like 50 miles an hour. No. Enjoy going at 5 because there's some important character building and personality building and just life lessons you got to learn that will sustain you when you're at 25 miles an hour and at 50 miles an hour. Because right now, I'm not slowing down and I don't intend to because I've figured out how to keep it going at this momentum. And then when I'm at 60 and 70, I'm going to keep sticking at it. But if I just landed in this position, honestly, I'd be overwhelmed and I'd be out by now.
Yeah.
So
it's great character building, man. Holy crap. What an episode. Austin, we really got to employ the mega episode strategy here.
Man.
So I feel like I can't believe where time
30
went.
minutes.
Yeah.
Man,
so
you had me enthralled, man.
I know, seriously. We could just keep. So this was an incredible episode, Dan. I love your storytelling, your approach to life. I think sometimes too, in content creation, everything can be viewed through rose-colored glasses, and that's not the reality of life. And so this was just a realistic conversation and history of the work that you've done. And I think it's very relatable to me, Austin, and everyone listening. So just want to thank you again for coming on the show today.
I want to thank you
if people
for doing this.
Because, please.
While you do a lot of thanking for guests, I do know that hosting a podcast and putting one together is relatively a thankless job. And I'm sure your audience is great and do write to you. But I want to just publicly on air thank you guys, because there's so much work that goes into organizing this and editing it and putting it together and dreaming about it and investing in it. You don't have to do this, but you choose to do it. So thank you for having me as a guest. And on behalf of your audience, thank you for putting in the work.
Oh, that's awesome, man. I think that's probably the first time that's happened in 100 and some odd episodes. So Dan, thank you. We appreciate you. If someone wants to connect with you, learn more about you, like what's the best way for them to do that?
The best way to do that is look up Dan Ram, DANRAM. My website is IamDanRam.com. You find me on any social media account at IamDanRam. The only caveat is do not be surprised when I message you back, and not if, but when. I respond to 100% of everybody that writes to me personally. So every comment is not a bot that's responding. Every DM is not someone on my team that's responding. Because for me, social media is not for selling anything. I don't sell anything. I have nothing to sell you, but just love to give and support to give. And that is why for me, it's about conversation and communication. So I'm old school that way. Connect with me on social media, write to me, tell me where you're at. You're not burdening me. That's why I'm online. I'm here to help you succeed and win. That's where my joy is in seeing you win. So if I can support you in your journey, please reach out, please write, tell me a story. Let's find ways to take you to the next level.
Heck yeah. Well,
wow.
You heard it from the source, folks. Links will be in the show notes. Go and check that out. And as always, if you like this episode, don't forget to rate it, like it, subscribe to it. And if you want more awesome resources like this, go to speakerflow.com/resources.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in today. Check the show notes for more info and see you next time. Later.